Good morning to you. I wonder what the sound is like. I had a few little sound issues occasionally with my phone, so I'll just wait and see if anybody wants to jump on, because I just felt called to share my own, always my own experience. Everything I share is my own experience, and I just wanted to share 11 ways this morning about how I dealt with severe anxiety. And if you've had PTSD, if you're an empath or a sensitive, and you pick up a lot of other people's energy, but on top of that, if you are in very stressful situations, and, you know, when I had 11 years old, I was diagnosed with, they didn't know what I was diagnosed with. I was actually ended up diagnosed with this new thing called glandular fever. I look back and I realise it was PTSD. So I wasn't actually diagnosed. Oh, hi, Clay. Tells me Clay's on. Lovely to see you, sweetheart. So although I'd had glandular fever, PTSD at 11, I had it again when I was 26 onwards for probably 20 years on and off. But when it was on, there were times in my life when it was debilitating. It was, I mean, I can't even find the words right now to share with you how horrific it was. And what happened, and I'm not here necessarily to share about the depth of trauma I went through whilst I was having these attacks of anxiety and panic attacks and PTSD. But what I will say, and what I'm going to share in this video, is some of the immediate actions I took when I was having an attack. And I hope it will really help some of you. And if you know anyone who would like this information, please share it. So the first thing I'm going to say is the very first thing, I think, that the number one thing that really helped was to breathe, to make sure I was breathing, to consciously breathe. And I know people talk about breath all the time, and sometimes when you hear the word all the time, you just start to sort of, it doesn't mean anything, but actually just to breathe, and to breathe fully and deeply. So breathe into your belly so that your belly gets bigger. And then breathe out. So the very first thing really is to start deepening your breath, because as you know, when you're having an anxiety attack, the breath will become very shallow, and it kind of feels like an emergency. Like there's this sense of emergency. So just to be able to breathe deeply, number one. The second thing to do is to begin to breathe in deeply with some kind of mantra. So I learned transcendental meditation. It was very, very useful to me. And the simplest way I'm going to give you, the simplest word I'm going to give you, is that as you breathe in, you're going to breathe in the word love. Just breathe in and just say to yourself, breathe in, and you breathe in love. You just say it in your head. And as you breathe out, you can just breathe out the word peace. So breathe in love, and you're just saying to yourself the word love, and breathe out peace. And I can assure you that I would get these attacks before going into a supermarket. Like I would drop the kids off at school, I would go food shopping, I'd start to get this anxiety coming up in me, sometimes very severe, and I would just sit in the car and I would breathe in. You know, this is really simple emergency stuff. Just breathe in peace, love, and breathe out peace. The third thing I recommend from my own experience is, again, this was often in the car. I would put on, well, it wasn't just in the car, it was actually at home as well. I would put on soothing music. Now, I remember sitting in my car and having classical music, and I never listened to classical music. I was a rock, punk, you know, heavy metal. We didn't quite have heavy metal then, it was called something else, but like just loud or very emotional music. I used to listen to The Cure and David Bowie, but to listen to music that is just very calming. I found that in my car, for about 1 year, I was just tuned into classical music. And that helped. And you can do that with your deep breathing, with your inhale love, inhale peace. So that's the third thing, is listen to very, very relaxing music. The fourth thing is in the emergency, is to speak kindly to yourself. Be kind, as if you were dealing with somebody else. So you're kind of stepping outside of yourself, which I'm going to use as the fifth thing. So you just tell yourself, I love you. It's like you are speaking to you as a baby. I love you. I care for you. I cherish you. You are so worthy. It's okay. You're going to be okay. It's all right. And just talk to yourself, like out loud. Talk to yourself like you're talking to a baby. I love you. It's okay. I adore you. And you can stroke yourself as well. Like, these things work. Like, when I say they work, they were immediate relief. And if you are an empath or a sensitive, and you know what I'm talking about, and you will know what I'm talking about, and you have been in that state, because so many people, my family didn't get me, people around me didn't quite understand what I was going through. So it can be quite lonely. We didn't either have things like blogs and that in those days so much. So the information wasn't there. There's lots of information now, but I just wanted to share what my immediate strategy was for meeting that place when I was feeling quite desperate, and like I was going to just crack up, I suppose you could say. So the next thing, I think this is the fifth thing, is to be able to actually detach yourself from the situation. And this is where your whole spiritual life may even begin, or you may start to delve deeper into what it means and what duality means. Because actually, you are not your body, you are not your mind, you are not your emotions. So you can step out and you can look at this person, this human being who's having this human experience, and you can detach yourself from that situation. Now, it's not always easy when you're right in the center of it. I will honor that. It's not always easy to do, but with practice, you can, even if it's like one little piece of string, like if you were a puppet, being this sort of this human being, and everything broke and you were hanging on by one string, like just find that little one string to pull yourself out of this person that you think you are, and just see it from a perspective that is outside of you. So you're watching this beautiful human being having this human experience, who's having an anxiety attack, and just love her or him, whilst listening to your music, whilst doing your breathing. Like, these things can be layered up and added or done individually, however feels like good for you, because you will find your own way of coping. But I just want to honor that it is not easy, it is possible, and that you will get through it. If I got through it, anyone can get through it, because mine was freaking severe. It was it's not an easy thing, but it does actually grow you spiritually. And if you are a sensitive, you've got powers that you can use. So it's really good to have the experience of what you will go on and help people with as well. So don't forget that. You came here to experience that. Now, this one is probably my favourite one. And I didn't really do this one in the car or when I was out and about. But this was one that you could do at home when you're having a serious anxiety attack. And this one might push a few buttons, but masturbation and orgasm is a really, really soothing way to get oxytocin into your body, to have that feel-good factor. And I know that a lot of women have problems with orgasm. And that's a whole nother topic that I love to support women with, because actually that is the life force energy that you have. And, you know, very often when I'm talking with a client, I can feel that their life force energy is low, is weak. And orgasm, you know, creative life force energy, kundalini, Shakti, whatever you want to call that energy is your life force. And when you are not able to connect to that orgasmic energy, and it's not, and I've said this so many times, it's not about sex, it's not about pornography. That's all real shadow side. That's what we're moving away from. That is not going to serve you. That's going to become addictive. But to connect to sacred sexuality, to your orgasmic body without any shame, and there's a big one there. You've got to let go of the shame if that's you. If you're, you know, maybe if you're an older woman who's been brought up in the society where all this was very shameful, as I know it is in my generation. But also what I'm hearing about the younger generation too, there's so much in that whole subject. But give yourself permission to masturbate, self-pleasure, I prefer the word self-pleasure, and to have an orgasm. And the chemicals released in your body from that orgasm, I promise you, if you're able to do that, will literally take you out of that moment of anxiety and really give you a breather. So that's a really lovely one to do. And I highly recommend self-pleasure and orgasm for many other things as well. I'm trying to be very organised here and give information in a more structured way, because I'm not a very structured person. I'm very much in the flow of the feminine. So another one, and I did have 11, is just to touch yourself and bring your hand onto your heart. So you could do that whilst you're breathing in love and breathing out peace. And just be aware of your body. In fact, one of my favourite ones, it was my ex-husband's, it was our best man who sadly passed away very recently. It was Andy, bless Andy. And he gave me a tip. And do you know what? I was so surprised, because it wasn't a spiritual tip. It wasn't breath work or yoga or anything like that, because he wasn't really into any of that at all. But this tip actually really worked. And what it was, he said, all you've got to do, he said, you just got to lift your shoulders up and down and say, so what? So what? So whatever was going on, whatever drama, whatever was going on in my life, you know, and there was always, always something going on. Oh my God. So what? It's an instant relief. It's an instant, and actually it helps take you out of that particular drama or anxiety attack or whatever drama, whatever story is playing out in your life. It's a moment of relief. So you could start to pull these together, you know. And then there's deep relaxation. Like just put some music on, lie down, or even if you've got to sit in the car and just go through your body. It's one of the first things that I experienced when I was going through major anxiety, was going to a seminar, and we did relaxation and just going through, and I teach it a lot, just going through the body, tensing the hand, feeling the hand tense, releasing, tensing the shoulders and releasing. And you just go through the body parts, tensing and releasing. Now that, if you're in the middle of an anxiety attack, I'd probably put that down a little bit if you're actually in that anxiety attack, depending on how bad it is. But it's something you could do for a sort of moderate, you know what I'm talking about, because if you've got PTSD, if you have anxiety, you'll know what I'm talking about. Let me know if you've got any questions. I'm really happy to respond later in the comments. But that's a really good technique, is just going through the body parts, tensing and releasing. Do it whilst listening to the music. You know, maybe do it if you're leading yourself into self-pleasure, having an orgasm. All these practices are going to be sort of like a very quick relief. Long term, you can keep those practices going. I'll just at the end just give a few long term things that you could start doing. Another one that I really got into was aromatherapy, and just to have a couple of oils. This, for example, is lavender. This is an essential oil. And I found that just taking a sniff, I think it's neroli actually. There's one particular oil. I actually ended up starting selling oils. I got so into them, and I was doing talks about oils. And even my talks, people were saying, I'm just calm listening to your talk. Because when you focus on something, the smell, and I think it was neroli, but that was really good, I believe, for the nervous system and to help calm you. And that sense of smell is an instant calm. So this one's lavender, but I believe that I particularly went out and bought neroli. I will double check and put in the comments. So carry it on you, have a smell of it for instant relief for your anxiety. And then the last one I want to mention is karma. Again, this would come down the list for instant, but to understand that we cannot take on everyone else's stuff. And, the first thing that comes to mind was one of my things, one of many that used to come, was that my kids had lost their father to cancer and that they would never know their father. And that kind of like haunted me a lot when I was feeling anxious anyway, like something would trigger my anxiety. But all those kinds of things, and karma, to understand that each soul has chosen to come in to experience their lives as their soul contract, so that, my kids would have chosen that, I would have chosen what I chose, and that we are not responsible for other people's experiences through life, is that we have to learn to let go. That's down the list when we're talking about immediate relief. But to understand, to understand that everything's happening on purpose, and all we can do is navigate our way through and find tools to take us through this. Because then what happens, you can see a long time later that it's quite an interesting journey being a human being. That's where I'm at. It's like, wow, I went through all this stuff. Wow, being a human, I've had a colourful life. I wouldn't change it for the world. So just being aware. And, I used to get involved in people's dramas. I lived on a council estate, and people had going through horrific breakups. People were losing children. Like, I was taking on everybody's stuff. And if you are an empath, you will know what I mean. Because usually, very often, unless we're going to go back into childhood and all that, but just in the immediate, what's often triggered us is not always our stuff. It's very often what we're being surrounded with people around us, people in our lives. So it's being aware that each of us is responsible for our own story, for our own patterns, and that we cannot take on other people's stuff, because as an empath, we do that way too much. So I hope that was useful. Just to finish, once you've got immediate relief and you want to start looking at how you can support yourself, I highly recommend yoga, whether you do that online, whether you do that by going to a class, but just practicing yoga, stretching. Be very careful with exercise, because I love exercise when I get into it. I love weights, and that can give you a high. But also, if you have PTSD and your energy is low, it can really trigger a reaction. And actually, exercise many times over my 20s, 30s and 40s triggered me into PTSD bouts, because I'd have bouts of PTSD. Very often, obviously, triggered by stress. But then I would use exercise, and it was great for the first 2 or 3 weeks. And then, week 4, week 5, I would find I had PTSD again. So I don't always recommend high intensity weight training or aerobic training or exercise. I used to do that spin class sometimes, and it would actually trigger an anxiety response, and I'd end up having PTSD for a couple of months. So over the years, when I got into my 40s, I started realising what my triggers were. So be aware of what your triggers are. Walk in nature, barefoot. We can't always get the sunshine, especially in this country. But walk in nature, barefoot if you can. Just ground yourself. And also to be aware of your thoughts. Finally, be aware of what you're thinking. So one of the things I used to teach people on my mentorships and courses was just to, even put sticky notes around what am I thinking, and just be aware of what you're thinking. Because as I said earlier, you know, you're not your thoughts, you're not your emotions, they're not you. So you, the real you, the higher self you, can actually go inside and say, what is she thinking? What am I thinking? Oh, I was just noticing that I was thinking about, you know, my son who's letting himself go, who's got a problem with drugs, or, you know, and so many of us have these problems in our families. But actually, if you can be aware of what you're thinking and realise that what you've done is you've taken yourself on a whole story and a whole journey of something that might happen in the future that probably will never happen, and you've been so focused on this problem and you're not even aware of it. So you need to step out of it, away from it, to be aware of it. And this is really what mindfulness is all about. So yeah, finally, I would say learn mindfulness. Learn mindfulness. I often teach mindfulness online. I love teaching mindfulness. It's very simple. It's not complicated. You don't need to go and get a degree to learn mindfulness. In fact, I would say it's everything that studying and getting qualifications and certificate isn't. It's so simple. It's so simple. We want everything to be complicated, but mindfulness is just so freaking simple. So I hope that helped. I hope I've kept a point. And please share this with anyone who. Thank you very much for watching. Please give this a heart if you can, or a comment, and help my algorithms, because I really want to reach as many people as I can with what I have learned on my journey, because it has been a fascinating journey, and I just want to support people and sending you loads and loads of love. It's not easy, but it's very, very rewarding to learn these practices and then share them with others. So if you've been through anything like I've been through, any of this, I'm sure you already are sharing it with others, but just make sure that you're also giving it back to you, because that's what we tend to do, isn't it? We tend to give out all our energy and then our pot is just empty. So it's having that balance and taking care of beautiful you. Have a lovely day, and see you again soon. Take care.